Welcome and thank you so much for clicking on my video. Today we're going to be talking about possibly a pullback, but also on the other side of that, we might be talking about a potential for a squeeze based on the time frame we're looking at. You see we're heading into this key area here. This means, are we going to be able to break through or are we going to pull back? That's what we're going to get into today as we cover some technical analysis for the SPY cues, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVDA, AMD, and Meta going forward, looking at AMC and GME as well. There are some interesting things with the options data for AMC and GME, and I think this is maybe a time to pay a little bit more attention. So let's get into it. Before we get started here with the SPY, I just wanted to notify you we have added the DIA to the weekly ranges down in the link in the description for Patreon. If you want the weekly ranges, that are these purple lines that are here on the chart for the SPY. We're going to update you though on those. That 68% zone is very, very helpful for any trading strategy. Any strategy that you use, whether you trade options, whether you don't, these are things you want on your chart. We give you the monthly ranges, the weekly ranges, and the daily ranges every single Friday for every stock we cover in case you have a Friday expiration. So that is very, very helpful. It's worth hundreds of dollars a month. You can get it for just a cup of coffee every single month. But we need to talk about two scenarios, one of them being pullback. But first, we might need to give you those weekly ranges so you know your 68% zone. Right now, we have 571.38 to the upside and 552.64 to the downside. Now, this might look big on the screen, but this is smaller than last week. Just so you're aware of that, this is smaller than last week. So a little bit less implied volatility for this week. Looks like maybe we are going to go into, hey, that Fed interest rate decision on September 18th, and that will be a very, very big deal. Okay, so as far as it goes for the daily expected move, we have 565.17 to the upside and 558.85 to the downside. So you can see this is very small for Monday. The implied volatility is small. Therefore, the most likely thing to see is actually a kind of consolidative day. Right? A consolidative day is the most likely thing to see as far as Monday goes. But we know that when these are thinner, it means something unexpected is a little bit easier to happen. So if you just get a bar down like this, we could end up going to lower levels. This is your 32% zone. So that's what we're paying attention to. And as far as pullback goes, if we're really going to talk about a pullback, I am really liking where this weekly move is. If we're going to pull back early on in the week, it is going to pretty much hit this zone right here, right? The breakdown area was in this area, and then the breakout area was in this area. So you have a little bit of a box, and we might even mark that off this week. We just mark these lows, mark those closing highs there, and we see that as a pretty good zone for some buyers to step in. I believe that is the most likely thing to be a good pullback in order for a trade setup, right? The most likely thing for a trade setup. Now, that would maybe turn this 2 hour down, and then we'd see that 2 hour turn back up by the end of the week. Now, if you're interested in the pullback, right, the pullback scenario, I think the 30-minute is your best bet. I think the 30-minute does have potential to get down to this area, maybe flash down to that area, touch that weekly expected move, and then turn back up. That would remain positive. It's key to understand that the 30-minute, the shorter time frame, is pretty damn positive. So pullback is the most likely scenario for the SPY at this moment, as that has rotated down. Now, if that would curl up at any time, that means positivity. So let's talk about positivity as well. As we look at the daily scale, you can see that has turned up. So that tells me, and as we go look at volatility in the dollar, we're going to see some more things. That tells me, hey, there is high potential for a squeeze. So you're pretty much at an area where if you can head higher from here, really break above this level, you could end up at higher levels. So something key this week will be to see what, and that all rhymed, what will stocks look like before that Fed interest rate decision? Are they going to be up in these areas, or are they going to be down in these areas? And that's something we'll pay attention to on our live show. Please subscribe so that you can join us live every single day. We go live every single morning of the week, just to watch some stocks with you, and I'll look at any stock and tell you my honest opinion about it. But for the SPY, I think you're looking at two scenarios. I just want to switch over to the Qs to show how that has crossed up as well. And it looks like what? Oh, right before a possible breakout between the trend between the two recent highs. So you're kind of in an area where you could pull back, But this is kind of confirming up, saying, hey, we do have potential for squeezing. And at the end of this video, we're going to show you volatility as well, which is kind of leaning towards that squeeze scenario. So in this area, right, for the Qs, we do need to talk about some weekly ranges, some daily ranges. Let's get those on your charts as well. We see to the upside, we do have 487.17 to the upside, and we do have 463.51 to the downside. A little bit smaller range. It looks big on a 2-hour chart, right? But this is a smaller range than what we've got in the past couple of weeks. And you'll notice that the 2-hour is overbought on both the SPY and the Qs. So a 2-hour pullback would make sense. Are we going to get down to this 463.51? Because as you can see, that little zone, right? That little zone that we created for the SPY, it pops up for the Qs as well. And we see right at the breakout area, we also have the weekly expected move, and it is right below that breakdown area. Okay, so if we do pull back, I suggest we pay more attention to 30-minute charts, see if early on in the week we can get down to that level, and then you just have a simple 30-minute curl up. Now, if that's going to extend for a while, maybe that 30-minute only gets you to here and you curl up, right? Because we have daily expected move, 479.17 to the upside and 471.15 to the downside. So if we're just going to get a brief 30-minute pullback and then end up turning back up before Wednesday, well, I'll be looking out for reversal signals. But right now, you do have squeeze potential, but you also have pullback potential early on in the week, I would say. For the Qs, when you really look at this, it's dipped down on this 30-minute for a while. It is still very positive. So anytime that curls back up, hey, positive territory, positive curl up, positive move, right? Positive curl up, positive move, all right? Most of the time, if you're in positive territory and you see this curl up by that center line, hey, you're gonna test this high, go make a new one, and we'll watch out if it's by that weekly expected move. As of right now, since people like to know what I'm leaning towards, I am leaning towards the 2-hour pullback scenario, where we actually pull down for a couple of days and get down to this weekly range. I think that would be a fantastic pullback. And the reason for that, it's just because when we reacted to that level where that weekly expected move is, it would have been nice to carve out a little bit of consolidation, right? Get that left head, right shoulder. We didn't do that. We got excited. We got that squeeze signal. And yeah, that's why I think we might have to go retest some of those levels or even reach down a little bit deeper, kind of go to that level where we should have grabbed those buyers. So that's something I would pay attention to for the Qs. It looks like there is a way up and a way down. It looks like early on in the week we could consolidate, but we also have to be prepared for some kind of squeeze. Now, one stock that we did see some good 30-minute signals down here to show that 2-hour curling up, still a decent trade, but not necessarily the most positive for Apple. Remember, once again, if you do need those weekly ranges for these individual stocks, you can get that down on Patreon in the description on the Patreon link. So one thing that I would pay attention for Apple this week is if we need a stronger base, if we need to curl over for a brief moment on this 2-hour and curl up at any time, right? I want to see if this 2-hour curls down and curls up at any time and gives me that trade setup, because that could be a good one as it tries to gear up to break through something like 225.84. Okay, so that's the main thing to pay attention to with Apple is 2-hour curls down. Hey, watch, you're getting a pullback, see if that's able to curl up. But we still want to treat this as this could be really bad. And then if it turns around, that will be a good sign. Now let's show you that trade setup that we saw for Apple, and we just noticed multiple times really seeing this type of behavior here, very upward, very significant divergence there on the MACD. You see how I draw this line up, and the MACD actually has a higher low. And then you go at the price action here, and the price action actually has a lower low. So that is overall divergence right there. And the reason that this is so good is just because the RSI is so significant here. So that is such a significant direction there for that RSI that it told us, hey, a bounce is very likely from here. A 2-hour turning up is very likely from here. But with that good of a signal, you would really like to see even more positivity than this. So since we're not seeing that yet, we have to say 30-minute curls up, we can go to 225.84. But if the 2-hour crosses down, that might be reaching down for those buyers to then collect them and turn back up over time. It'll tell us a lot after the first couple of days of this week that we can see that price action and see what the most likely thing is going forward. Tesla has kind of a two-way street as well, right? It kind of has two stories to be told here. Is this some kind of double top, right, with some divergence popping up above you, or is this going to be some kind of breakout moment? So I think, yeah, for the most part, a pullback here would be good to gear up to get through, right? Gear up to get through this zone. We've struggled to get through that zone a lot in the past. You notice the last time we got through it, what did we need? We needed a gap up, okay? So we still have to pay attention to those little gap ups and things like that. I just think we need to also pay attention to a possible pullback, right? The 2 hour pulling back, giving you a higher low to then maybe break through that zone for Tesla. That's something that I'd be paying attention to. But for the most part, we just want to say if the 2 hour is curling down, that means bad things, but it is in positive territory. So overall, you would say that is most likely going to be a pullback that leads to more upside, unless it proves this double top. Now, how would it prove that double top? If this starts to go negative and we start to curl down again on a daily chart, that would tell you, hey, that is definitely going to play out. You'd get down to these type of areas. This would cross on that MACD, and then you might just break through this type of flagging here. So that's something I'd pay attention to. As we look at a 30-minute chart, you're going to notice something interesting here. Now we're going to talk about the bullish side, because on the shorter time frame, you might have already pulled back enough for the 30-minute to make that breakout moment. The only problem with that is once you get to this area, there are sellers in this area over and over again. You can see it here, you can see it here, you can see the wick there, you can see the wick there. If we go back in the past, you see, okay, we gapped past that. That means this zone's important. Wicks, 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 right? So there are sellers in this area. So if the 30-minute turns up like this and then just fails, you might have a divergence right here on the 30-minute that tells you, hey, that 2 hour is likely to cross. That 2 hour crosses, it might have divergence at that point too, which means you have to be aware of the daily crossing. So 2 hour pullback sounds like the most likely option, but I'm aware of how things can rotate down very quickly. Amazon on the 30-minute, we just want to pay attention to the fact that the 30-minute is dropping. Okay, so if this is going to see positivity early on in the week, that thing's got to curl back up, right? 30 minutes got to curl back up. If we're going to see more negativity, more of a pullback, which is something I'm more leaning towards, well, then I would think Amazon would curl over on this 2 hour, and maybe we see a couple days worth of selling down to something like 179, 180. Something in that area would be a good area to retest. And then we just want to see, does that MACD remain positive? Does it curl back up? Because that's just a simple swing trade. We have the swing trading course down in the description. We also have the using technical indicators course down in the description as well. Both of them you can get right now for $150, and they will teach you a lot about how to use these ranges, how to learn about divergence, how to understand the MACD and RSI. But for now, all you need to understand is if this turns down, that means most likely we are pulling back, right? Now, it doesn't have to be that dramatic. We can pull back with time by doing a little bit of this where that price barely changes, and then just see this get down to that center line and curl back up into positive territory, right? So that's something we are paying close attention to for Amazon. And then if I get that curl up, by the way, this is just another thing I'm going to talk about real quick. If I get this curl up, what is something very beneficial to have if this is going to see another swing trade to the upside and take out this high and go make a new one? Well, weekly ranges, right? Weekly ranges. Maybe that thing's sitting right around 193. You see it curl up right around 185 or something like that. And then boom, you can play that all the way up to that zone because that's the most likely area. That is what is priced in by the options market for this week for Amazon. So that's something key to understand there. Now, so I guess the overall take for this one is 30-minute curls up. Hey, we can see a little bit of a move, but most likely we do need to see that 2 hour pulling back unless we start to see more squeezing with the daily momentum taking over, which in that case, I would be a little bit worried heading into that Fed interest rate decision. NVIDIA is another one that is in a sell zone as of right now. We know this zone is important. There can be sellers here. Remember this wick over here? Sellers were there. We kind of gapped to get out of this zone, retested back into it. Sellers jumped in. So we want to pay attention to this area because if that it's just pretty much a lot similar to Amazon. This is the one we saw the great trade setup. NVIDIA is the reason that we said some kind of little mini squeeze is going to happen here, and it ended up playing out. So that's fantastic. We were following the signals well. Hopefully you were able to catch that info. Hopefully you found that helpful, and thank you so much. Give yourself a thumbs up and pat on the back, and thank you so much for subscribing and giving a like to this video if you enjoyed this information and it was helpful. So thank you guys for showing up to the live videos because it's been a lot of fun. Sorry I was sick last week, but this week should be a good one. 2 hour pulls back, okay? 2 hour pulls back is what I'm leaning towards, right? And this is pretty simple. It's because I would have liked to create a handle right here. Right? I would have liked a handle right here. So if we need to go down, then I would assume we're going to reach down like this is creating that handle right now on the 2 hour chart, right? We see some kind of move down like this, and then we're able to curl back up. See some kind of move down like this. And even though this is going negative, as long as it's able to curl back up and near that center line, you have a good probability of seeing the high tested or going to make a new one. Maybe we test something like 125, since that's what we were really leaning towards when we saw this spacing out signal. So we'll pay attention to that. So 2 hour curls down, overall still pullback, but you have to be aware it's a little bit close to the center line, so it could be a little bit uglier. We'll find out as more price action comes forward. Now in this price action here, you see this kind of flagging, which tells me I got to pay attention for positivity early on in the week. Look where that 30-minute MACD is. That 30-minute MACD is down by that center line, and we actually don't have reversal signals up here. So if I was having to base my theory of what happens early on in the week based on just NVIDIA alone, I would say the most likely thing is, as this is positive, that we see a curl up here, this starts to continue, and then we actually see a 30-minute divergence pop up, right? A 30-minute divergence pops up, and then that leads to some downside. So that is the most likely thing I would say for NVIDIA at this point. But if that 2 hour crosses down, then I know that's immediately the other thing is happening. That's why it's good to pay attention to two things, just be ready to react. But for NVIDIA, a key thing to understand, pretty much a lot across the board, they're crossing up on daily MACDs. Okay, so you have a consolidative day right as you cross up on a MACD, which tells me this thing can really get going. This thing can really start to squeeze. Remember, the last time we crossed up on a daily MACD was right here. What happened? Well, 4 days afterwards, it was much, much higher, right? It was at 129. We were down at 116, then you're at 129. That's a 15-point move in just 4 days. That's a very, very good move. Okay, so we want to make sure to understand that most of this, if we do curl down, will be pullbacks because we have daily momentum there. The only way that this changes is if this daily can flip back to negative. But you rarely, but you do see it sometimes where a red bar will come up. This will cross back down immediately. You do see it. We've seen it with Tesla before. But with something like NVIDIA, a lot of the time it will, at least even in a pullback time, right, where it shows maybe even a red bar like this, you will still see green here. So that's something key to understand. One of the rules that we give out and we talk about in the course is if a MACD on the daily scale has turned up, I do not, this is just one of my rules, I do not take any kind of short position on that stock because daily momentum is way stronger than a little 30-minute or even a 2-hour chart, right? Daily momentum is much stronger. This thing could just gap up come Monday. So I don't want to necessarily short this position. What I'm talking about when I talk about a 2-hour crossing down is I'm looking for the next trade opportunity. I'm not saying I'm going to take a play here where if this crosses down, I'm going to say, oh yeah, this is going to $100. No, I'm waiting for it to give me a very obvious trade setup. And as we are going into a positive trend, when we're not fully there, the big move could be coming, right? This is a big move, but I think a bigger move could be coming if we're able to pull back and then curl back up into positive territory sometime around that Fed interest rate decision. And I think this would be the better trade than maybe even this one over here, even though this was a great trade. AMD was trying to give the signal like NVIDIA. It really was. It was trying to hold this flat divergence. It was trying to hold this downward move here for that RSI. So it was trying so hard to make that same signal. And that's why I said, hey, overall, if NVIDIA sees that positivity, AMD most likely will see it with this type of signal. It's not a great signal, but when its brother or its big brother has a really good signal, then you could really see that play out. And we just said, okay, but with this one, what you want to make sure to pay attention to is maybe I could take a little stab on if that curls up on a 30-minute with that little flat divergence there, but I overall want to see that 2-hour curling up because this is a signal that should curl up a 2-hour, even if it's kind of crappy like this one. But since NVIDIA shows a good one, I want to see if that 2 hour is crossing up. So let's see if that 2 hour crossed up. It did, and it actually crossed up pretty much the day or 2 hours after that 30-minute signal gave it to you. 137.57 was the level that crossed up, and boom, that's why we pay attention to divergences. This is what you can learn in the course down in the description, the Using Technical Indicators course for $100. It's probably worth almost $2,000 to actually take a course like that, but it's $100 right now, so get it while you can. As we look forward into this, we can see that AMD is very positive, but it's also overbought, right? So if we wanted to pull back, this still would be a good thing. Now, if we're going to see more upside early on, you're not going to see this 2 hour cross down. Sorry, I got the hiccups for a second, but you're not going to see this 2 hour cross down. But the bearish thing would overall be if that 2 hour did cross down. Now, this is even more positive than NVIDIA, so most likely it will set up a higher low. And I would really like this area right here. You see how we retested it with that wick right there. I really like this area of 142. I know it's a 10-point drop, but something like that could go a long way. So that you see this little tiny area between, I would say 142 and 144, 145. Somewhere in there, I would really like a 2 hour to pull back and then cross back up into positive territory. See that cross down, cross back up, and then see that big upward move. Remember, we haven't created divergences yet, and we haven't seen this MACD get to high enough levels to really create those sturdy divergences. So the actual pullback, if we do get a pullback, that could be an opportunity for upside, as we're seeing other signals from volatility, as we're seeing some other signals from the dollar. Now, we still have to pay attention to trap behavior. We're going to pay attention to those things live because, you know, we're at an area where if people start to see a short squeeze, which you're already seeing it, you can see it from the 30-minute, right? The MACD blatantly turning down while the price action just keeps trickling up. That is a sign of some kind of squeeze. So the reason we have to pay attention to it is because what if we see some kind of all-time high trap? What if we see positivity for a week or two, and then that leads to some divergences that could lead to a downfall? I don't want to get overly dramatic to saying there's going to be upside, even though I'm talking about there could be potential for more squeeze to come. But I want to make sure to keep a level head. That way I can look at things kind of with as much unbiased or as little bias as possible, and I can just say, what is this signal good for right now? If AMD curled down, let's say I've actually pulled back, and then you saw a little 30-minute signal like this up towards 160.83, and you notice that happening, but then you notice this MACD down here looked a little bit like this. Okay, that is what we want to pay attention to. We want to make sure to pay attention to those things. We can still take what is happening right here and make a play out of it, but be aware if those signals start to pop up, we have to react in those areas. Meta is one that is really pulling back with time, right? Pulling back with time. That's when your MACD is overall pointing down, getting closer to that center line, but you're overall moving sideways, right? We're really moving sideways here. This is a little bit different than AMD. AMD was kind of doing this move, right? It was kind of doing this, just kind of slowly going up like this, and that MACD pointing down. So this means that this is actually consolidation at this point. And if that does want to consolidate a little bit more, get down to that center line and curl up, that can give you some kind of signal. Now notice that the MACD for Meta is much higher than what we just looked at for AMD, which tells me if this does curl up, I have to be aware of any kind of reversal signal that I see up in these areas. That's why I'm glad I have a weekly expected move. If my weekly expected move is here, I see this 30-minute curl up and it goes up to that area, the most probable thing is we're going to use that weekly move as resistance. People ask me all the time, what's the best support? What's the best resistance? To how to find it. Weekly ranges. You can literally take the options data and see where stocks are most likely to land, 68% chance to land by the end of the week. And if you see a reversal signal outside of them, you can really utilize that. And I think this is a good time to show you one of those opportunities because we just saw one with NVIDIA, right? We saw one on the 30-minute with NVIDIA. It came outside of a weekly move. It did this and then it popped up. Awesome. And it's outside of a monthly move. It tested the monthly move and then popped up. Awesome. But I'm going to show you a very, very obvious one, and that's going to be the SPY, which we talked about this in real time. People were asking me, what's the best support and resistance? Well, at this time, the daily expected move, notice the monthly, we're already outside of it. So if we make a reversal signal here, that's a good sign. And that's exactly what we got. So we were trying to see if that signal would form live. And overall, we said this. If the SPY is going to break through its daily expected move, watch the Qs. And this is just something that we do live. I think it would be fun to do with you guys right now. I said, watch the Qs. The Qs had not hit, at that point, did not hit their weekly expected move yet, right? It didn't hit the weekly expected move yet. And therefore, we had more downside. This was the actual target. And you'll notice that the SPY tested the lows, right? The SPY did this. As the Qs tested that daily expected move, we see that upside. So we had reversal signals outside of a monthly as the overall take here, right? We had a 30-minute divergence on the SPY outside of a monthly expected move. And that is the things that we want to pay attention to for big moves in the market. That's why we're catching these big moves at the beginning of every month. We caught it in August 4th. We caught that divergence that was below the monthly expected move. And now going into September, a couple weeks in, we actually found that again, and they have proven to be great trade setups. So learn how to trade these things. But going back over to Meta, let's just solidify what's going on here. If the 30-minute does cross up, positive things, right? Test the high, go make a new one, watch out for divergences. If the 2 hour is going to see more of a pullback here, well, then that might pull down and fill this gap before it's able to turn back up. But anytime that turns back up, I want to pay attention. All right, now it's time to talk about AMC and GME. And the reason I really wanted to talk about these, and you should maybe be aware, is because the implied volatility for these has been higher the past couple of weeks, and now it is at the lowest point I have seen it in probably 6 months. Okay, this is the lowest point it's been at in 6 months. And you're probably saying, you know, everyone on Twitter says I should really pay attention when implied volatility is higher because that means a big move can come. The only problem with that is short sellers and market makers know when that options data is pricing in a big move and they clamp down on the stock. That's why when you do see higher implied volatility, you almost get less movement from something like AMC or GME. So this week, something completely different is happening. Remember, this was the level 556, would have taken about a, 10% move in order to actually see something crazy. Well, this is what the options data is pricing in for this week, a little bit closer, 534. Now that is going to be still a good move, but that is much, much, much closer than we've seen in a long time to seeing something crazy. So if you really want to see something crazy, you need daily momentum. That happened. We did not curl back down. We're holding above the moving averages except for the 50. If you can really cross through that 534, you can see something crazy. And that's the overall take with AMC. Now, we've talked about the 30-minute a lot. The 30-minute has told us over and over and over. We've said this over and over. I've researched the AMC and GME thing. And what happened was a 30-minute crossed up and it never crossed back down until it hit hundreds of dollars. So that is something I would be paying attention to. If you get a 30-minute cross up that can get you through that 534, you can start to see a 32% chance of seeing something crazy. All right. Now, as we switch over to something like GameStop, you're noticing that the 30-minute is very curvy here. So if that does cross down, you can see negativity. But if we have the daily cross back up, we can see positivity, and you're noticing some divergence down here at the lows. So if we do get that daily cross up, sorry, let me move this mayo after we give it some juice. Well, you can see good things. But as of right now, GME, you would say, hey, bad things can happen. If that gives me a green impression here, though, hey, we might be off to the races. Let's update that level because GME has seen higher implied volatility than AMC for a while. And so I want to pay attention to this week because it looks like we have a lower level to get through. And remember, last week it was 29.06. That was a massive move price in, probably because of earnings, right? But now you have an extremely low implied volatility. There you go, 22.41. Look how much closer that is to seeing something crazy. As of right now, we reacted to that weekly expected move last week. Now, if we see that daily curl up, you notice if we get a daily curl up, where would we be? We'd already probably be somewhere crazy. So I'd really be paying attention to on GameStop if that daily MACD is able to rotate up. But just so you're aware, the most likely thing as this MACD is sitting right now is downside. Now, at this point, I did want to talk about the dollar. If we're going to see more positivity, the dollar has really kind of bounced from this level, consolidated, but what if that ends up falling back down? As we reach these two highs up here, what if we curl back down on this daily MACD? That would convince me people are getting out of cash going into stocks, and maybe we see more of a squeeze going forward. But what if we create some kind of divergence here for the dollar? Remember, we found the bottom in the dollar here. That was helpful. Now we have to be paying attention if that daily rotates down, because that could mean we're going to squeeze for a little bit, and then we pay attention to divergence being formed, right? So we can pay attention to all those things. I really like this level of 99.41, but as of right now, you see that dollar really looking like it wants to come down, kind of getting a little wick here though. So let's pay attention to a 2 hour, see if that thing can curl up early on in the week. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards pullback early on in the week. It looks like we could see some kind of rotation into cash for a brief moment. And then we just have to see, as that is pretty damn negative. I mean, it's pretty negative here. We have to see, is that just going to react up for a moment and then cross back down into negative territory? We'll pay attention to reversal signals live on the dollar. But for the most part, if the dollar crosses down on the daily MACD, we could see a couple more days of positivity to the upside. Just pay attention for reversal signals, because that could be some kind of trap. Volatility, we want to pay attention to early on in the week because of what we are seeing from this 30-minute MACD, right? We're seeing this upward move here for the MACD, not necessarily proving for the RSI, right? So this is why I'm leaning towards a pullback that leads to this fading, because when you don't have them on both indicators at the same time, right? This little blip here kind of ruining it for you. When you don't have them at the same time, it doesn't mean necessarily reversal is the most probable thing. It actually means a bounce in volatility is the most probable thing. Some kind kind of 2-hour curl up. That then leads to more downside, and that makes total sense as you look at the positioning of the MACD. Something we talk about in the course is the positioning of the MACD. It is low, so it is going to be difficult for this to just spike up and go into a positive trend. Notice I said difficult, not impossible. Okay, it can still happen, but in order for that to actually go into a positive trend, you're going to need a daily curl up. For now, if that 2-hour does cross up and then cross back down, that's when you would overall say, okay, the pullback is over, volatility is about to subside. Now, how do you know if this is going to be a bigger overall move? Well, that's going to be the daily time frame. If the daily time frame can turn this down, we've gone down for a couple of days. If the daily time frame can turn that back up, you might have major volatility coming in again with a higher low. So I think we could see a reaction down to that 200 at some point, but I think we're going to get some kind of pullback in the market, aka a bounce from volatility, and then we'll see that subside, and maybe this is the type of behavior we need to pay attention to going forward. So the main takeaway for this video is heading into this week, we do have a pretty positive trend, so we could see some kind of pullback, but is that positive trend on the daily scale really going to take over and going to see some gap ups? For now, it looks like we could see a reaction from volatility early on in the week, so I think a pullback is the most likely scenario, but obviously we always trade like water and we trade the signals. So if these signals start to just keep curling back up, I'm going to remain patient and wait for the next trade setup. I just had a great trade with NVIDIA. I'm not going to sit and try to overtrade and ruin that by any means. I want to wait for the next easy play. There are easy plays showing their face out there. Okay, there are easy plays showing. NVIDIA is the one that showed it to us. Even the SPY showed us one this week. So we shouldn't have been caught off guard by the upside. We were talking about some kind of mini squeeze that could happen. Looks like the mini squeeze is happening. Is it going to turn into a full-blown short squeeze by volatility rolling over here? Because volatility rolling over does tell you, hey, downside is the most likely option. Or are we going to see some kind of blip and create a reversal signal before that actually takes place, before we see volatility come back in? So thank you guys so much for watching. I know that there's a way up and there's a way down. We just have to react. We have to pay attention to our signals, and we have to just push the buttons and let overall our signals tell us what to do. And that's something very, very good there. But thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for liking, subscribing. You guys are fantastic. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoy those new weekly expected moves with the DIA up on Patreon. And you can get all the links down in the description are there for you if you're dedicated to learning with the courses down in the description. And if you need a little help with some taking a profit or things like that, those weekly ranges can come in some serious handy. All right, thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope your family is doing well. I hope you are doing well, and I'm ready to get trading this week. So let's get to it this week, and I hope you have a great night. Peace.